Did you know that the Lord of Era Aura forming Larry Bird once walked into one of the NBA three-point contests and asked the room, "Which one of you is coming in second?" The crazy part? He actually won the contest. Today, we are discussing the funniest Larry Bird stories that you will never hear. But before that, if you love videos where we debunk the funniest moments of legends, give us a sub. The three-point contest.
What were you thinking after the terrible start on that final round?
Well, I just worried about getting the 2-point balls down after I missed the shots, but I knew he just had 15 points, and I still had plenty of time. Once I got to the top of the key, I knew I had to make some shots.
Kevin McHale was one of Larry's teammates, but he wasn't just any teammate. He understood Larry to the core. McHale would always know how serious Larry was about the competition and how much pride he took in proving he was the best in the world. But every now and then, Bird would do something so serious with such a straight face that it would become hilarious, which is quite ironic. This happened before the 1986 NBA All-Star Weekend three-point contest, even before it started. Larry Bird walked into the locker room at Reunion Arena in Dallas and looked at the rest of the field, which was filled with all the world's greatest shooters that you can imagine. He asked one question to everyone: "Which one of you is coming in second?" Then he simply walked out. There was no smile, no jokes, just business. This is one of the moments that stuck with guys like MD Hale because Larry didn't say it to get a laugh. He was damn serious about what he meant. And the punchline of his joke? Well, he won the contest, and he celebrated it with his finger in the air before even shooting, before even the last shot went in. Looking back to this moment, Mikhail and his former teammates all started laughing because of how ridiculous it was. It wasn't actually what Larry Bird said that was so funny, but rather the fact that he followed his trash talk with utter grace, which surprised everyone. From there, Bird was so in the zone that he repeated this performance in 1987 and 1988, winning consecutive three-point contests and ultimately cementing his reputation as someone who doesn't play around with his words and even the basketball. Cold welcome of Magic Johnson.
Sit down there, relax. Let's put on a show just for...
Next, we have a very awkward moment, which is Magic Johnson's meeting with Larry Bird. Johnson always had the biggest smile and a personality that was so likable that he could become friends with just about anyone. From the moment he met Larry Bird during a college all-star event in 1979, he thought that they'd become friends. But Larry had different plans. Even after the meeting, Bird barely said a word. There was no small talk, no handshake energy, just straight-up business. For Magic Johnson, who loved the idea of connecting with his competitors, it was cold. But in hindsight, it was quite funny, because it was so awkward. Things were so hilarious to the point where Magic Johnson even remembers trying to break the ice by cracking a few lines and receiving absolutely nothing back in return. All he would ever get would be a quiet stare and calm confidence that Larry Bird carried in every room. Magic has told us many times that he wanted to be friends with Larry, but Larry never wanted any of that. So, in the end, Magic Johnson started hating him, too. But over time, after years of battling in many NBA finals throughout the 80 seconds and sharing legendary moments on the court, a unique friendship started to grow between them. Now looking back at the past, Magic Johnson laughs because that was just who Larry was. He was less friendly, more focused, and wanted sheer competition to push him to the next level. Isiah Thomas. Many NBA players face losses that are hard to digest. But for Isiah Thomas, it was as funny as it was difficult. In Game 5 of the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals at Boston Garden, the Detroit Pistons were up by 1 in the final seconds. All they needed was to inbound the ball cleanly and run the clock. Then Isiah came blazing through like a phoenix, taking the ball, scanning the floor, and finally making the pass. But then Larry Bird broke his whole ploy. Now Thomas thought that everything was going into slow motion because he's never really taken the ball out, and that wasn't his thing. But this time he did. Larry Bird sneaked in, and Isiah was so shocked to see that he didn't even sense Larry Bird coming. Larry caught the ball right on the baseline and somehow managed to keep his balance just like a ballerina. In Isiah's mind, it was just absurd thinking, with him thinking, how the hell is he doing that? Everything seemed to be going in slow motion, and Larry Bird jumped the passing line like he had seen the play drawn up in advance. He stole the ball and shot it to Dennis Johnson for the game-winning layup. Looking back, Isiah now gets a laugh when telling this story, because for him, this was one of the most unbelievable moments he's ever seen. There was no trash talk, no build-up, just Larry Bird coming through the fire like some god. Chris Mullin. Chris Mullin already faced Larry Bird countless times in the NBA, but being part of the 1,992 Dream Team in Barcelona gave him a fresh new perspective on the legend. The team had seen some of the greatest players ever, and during Monte Carlo practices, the competitive fire was just beginning. Mullin already remembered the battle before, where Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson went head-to-head while trading buckets, trash-talking, and just going through it with intensity. Magic Johnson was essentially saying that the NBA wasn't Michael Jordan's yet. But for Michael, he was already making it clear in the league that he was already in. Everyone was locked in, including Bird, who wasn't really playing but was just watching from the sidelines as the chaos unfolded. Then, in the most Larry Bird fashion possible, he leaned back and quietly said, "It's Michael's league now." There was no drama, no big speech, just one difficult observation that shocked everyone. For Chris Mullin, after seeing Larry in such a tough spot by not competing while also praising Michael Jordan, it was an amazing dry delivery that Larry always gives. And that is what made this moment so memorable. Not only that, but it also made Chris Mullin laugh, because it was just too unbelievable to hear from someone like Larry Bird. Before we move on to the next funny moment, we'd like you to subscribe to our channel if you are interested in more videos like this. Reggie Miller schooled.
And he gets the ball, jumps out, busts the play, comes out, gets the ball at the slot, shoots the ball. As the ball's in the air, he kind of turns towards the Phoenix bench and yells, "Told you so!" Takes off running to the locker room.
Next up is Reggie Miller, who was never shy about talking. He is the guy who built his career on getting into players' heads, especially during the tense moments. When he found himself standing next to Larry Bird during a break at a free throw line at Market Square Arena, he did what came naturally, which was to throw off some words to the legendary basketball player. Overall, it was a very close game, but now Bird was at the free throw line. Reggie decided to use his interesting birds, trying to ice the shooter, trying to shake the shooter just a little bit. As soon as the official gave Larry the ball, Reggie crossed the lane with the Bird dribbling once. However, he then stopped and looked at Reggie, saying, "Are you kidding me? I'm the best shooter this game has ever seen. You think you're going to be able to ice me?" Saying that, he threw the ball, and the shot went in. Reggie walked to the other side with Kevin McHale, looking at him and telling him that it was kind of stupid for him to do something like that against an opponent like Larry Bird. But instead of getting angry, this is the moment that threw even Reggie off, because it was so bold and loud, and once it came out, it was backed by sheer performance. Charles Barkley.
He said, "Hey man, you can't put no white dude on me."
Hey,
That is straight disrespect, right? He said, "Don't put no white dude on me." So check this out.
Charles Barkley had played against Larry Bird many times with the Philadelphia 76ers. And even though he already respected Larry's game, it was the NBA superstar's attitude that he didn't really like. But even so, it was funny. One story in particular still makes Barkley laugh. Not because it was meant to be funny, but because of how genuinely offended Bird seemed in that particular moment. Barkley remembers a Bird cursing under his breath during a game. When Charles asked what was wrong, Larry responded bluntly, "You guys are being disrespectful to me." Charles Barkley was quite confused at that moment and asked what he was even on about. But Bird said to him, "You guys are putting a white guy on me." For Barkley, this was, at that very moment, Barkley couldn't hold his laughter. Not because Bird was joking, but because what he said was so absurd. At that point, Larry wasn't having it. He looked straight at the bench, was quite annoyed, and basically called it out as disrespectful. This is one of the very few moments when Larry seemed ruthless, proud, and ready to destroy you if you felt like you were even remotely disrespecting him. Al Harrington's Welcome to Indiana. Al Harrington got to see Larry Bird not just as a player on the court, but as a boss when Bird was finally running the Indiana Pacers as a head coach. This happened in the late 1990 seconds, when he carried himself with the same serious, no-nonsense behavior. Even as a boss, he carried the same level of grace and didn't talk much. But when he did, people listened. For Harrington, he was in for one of the most interesting experiences of his life after he missed a flight and showed up late to the introductory press conference after he was drafted by the Pacers in 1988. He walked into the arena just to see his mom with a disappointed look on her face. Then he went up to Larry Bird, who reached his hand out, looked him dead in the eye, and just said, "Don't ever be late again." For Al Harrington, there was no introductory welcome or welcome to the team, but just the regular statement that put fear into his whole body at that time. But here's where things get interesting. Larry didn't actually want to embarrass him, but just to give him a warning that if he keeps up this attitude, he'll never be able to become even a half-decent basketball player ever. Just the way Larry delivered this message to him about being accountable is something that put a lot of emotion in Al ever since. Bill Walton. And now we have the most interesting one, which is when Bill Walton joined the Celtics in 1985. At this point, he was nearing the end of his career, but still smart, plenty competitive, and still looking for the biggest challenges that he could. He went into the room ready to play team basketball, moving the ball and even finding some good shots. But Larry had different plans, and he made it clear right away. Larry Walton remembers stretching on the floor in his locker room when Larry walked in and told him that he's the one who's got all the shots on the team. In other words, just because Kevin or Chief weren't playing, it made no other opportunities for Bill Walton. He then told Walton to get his butt to the weak side and get some rebounds so he could shoot more. This was disrespectful. But at the same time, Walton didn't take it too personally, and to this day, he laughs about that particular game where Larry showed him utter dominance. And that's about it for the funniest Larry Bird stories you might have never heard of. Let us know in the comments down below the funniest moment that you found. If you liked the video, please subscribe and ring the bell icon for more.